Hello and welcome back. In this video you'll see a summary of all the tough work involved in the restoration of a rare general processor GPS-4 dual 8-inch floppy disk drive box and its Apple II interfacing. I always need your support, so if you like my videos, please ding the bell and subscribe to my channel. Enough talking, let's get started. This project begins in an e-waste recycling center where I barely recognize this dual-inch floppy disk drive box that was in a real bad shape and left outside to the elements. That box belongs to a general processor GPS-4 vintage computer that was missing, but you can have an idea of how it originally was from these vintage ads. Built in Florence, Italy, by General Processor Company in between 1980 and 1982, it had a Z80 6 MHz CPU, 128 kilobytes of RAM, CP/M OS, and different storage options, including this 1 MB dual floppy disk drive unit. This is how a complete machine was being sold at the time. So I bought the relic and brought it home. The first thing to do is always to make a general checkup and proceed with a total teardown of the unit to assess its real physical condition. You never have to try to power it on to avoid damages to electronics or risk of being electrocuted. Now, the complete disassembly follows with the drive's structure extraction and unscrewing and pulling out the single drives. It's quite a long and boring procedure, so I'll leave it there, but I'll accelerate the boring video part. Please keep in mind that this box weighs more than 25 kilos, so you'll frequently hear me puff away. Here I'm tearing down all the components and keeping a record of what goes where. These are the two disk drives. They are two BASF 6104 made in 1982. They look in good condition, but you'll see later that they were not. This is the internal chassis of the box, with the power supply, fan and all the wiring. It needed cleaning, and due to rust and aging of the components, I decided to entirely replace the old linear power supply that you see here to avoid problems with the drives. Both drives were dirty, with the lead screws lubricant dried out and being home of various insects. The drive's restoration procedure starts by removing more parts, cleaning with compressed air, alcohol and soap, and lubricating all parts with a specific lubricant. Il verde di qua. Now that the two drives are cleaned, it's time to strip the frame from the other parts. As I said, I didn't trust the original power supply, so I took it down and kept it aside for obvious historical reasons. What you see here are all the new components needed to make the drives work and for Apple II interfacing. I provided a new power supply, motor capacitors, connection flat cable, connectors, and an 8-inch floppy drive interface card for the Apple II. These drives the plus 24 and plus and minus 5 volts power supply. Since I didn't find an all-in-one power supply for those power lines, I had to assemble one from stock components. I had to replace the damaged backplate cable connector and build a new flat cable for computer interfacing. A special tool should be used, but I relied on a vise instead. Replacing motor capacitors requires some care because these are 220 volts motors. I made a run test and verified that rotation speed was within the expected tolerance. At the first main circuit power on, I got magic smoke from one of the capacitors. Apart from the surprise, this is quite normal for circuits of this age, so I had to replace them all, and there are 20 for each drive. And here are all the zombies. In this final run test, I insert a floppy disk and lock it in by closing the drive door. The flop itself starts spinning. By moving the read-write head back and forth, our computer can access the data on the disk. There are two heads in this disk drive, one for each floppy disk side. The maximum floppy disk capacity is 1 megabyte of data. I needed brackets to adapt the new power supply to the existing support, so I designed and 3D printed them. To avoid shocks, I rebuilt and carefully tested the high voltage lines. The final box assembly doesn't need any explanation, so enjoy the ride. sopra. Piedino sopra. About the Apple II interfacing part, I had this 8-inch floppy disk drive card that came with no manuals and no software, so I had to get creative and make a complete reverse engineering of the card, meaning that I had to rebuild how the hardware and the onboard firmware works before interfacing it to the drives. I had to live verify the behavior of the signal lines with the help of a digital signal analyzer. That wasn't enough because I had to go through the full disassembly and understanding of the onboard firmware to make the right interface configuration of the drives. So after all that work, this was the final interface setup between the box and the Apple II. Here is the finished project. You will now see an Apple II booting Disk Operating System 3.3 from General Processor GPS-4 8-inch floppy disk drives. That's all. I shared this experience with you. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your comments down below. Bye!